Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. So it's that time of the year, the October is here, and even though it's early in the month, I've decided to do a Halloween themed tutorial, mostly so that you have time to get through it and then maybe create something on your own towards the end of the month. So there is enough time for you to prepare. There will be probably more Halloween themed content coming from me this month, but I wanted to start with the tutorial. If you're new to the channel and you'd like to see tutorials like this in the future, please hit that subscribe button and the bell to get notified when I release something new. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, it really helps the channel. And remember, if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you sometimes have a little trouble following these faster paced tutorials, I've created a course specifically for you. It's called 3D Starter Kit and it should really get you up to speed. It will teach you all the basic techniques I use daily in my videos and in my tutorials. So that should make following my tutorials and process videos a breeze for you. It's a shorter course, so it's priced accordingly and it's very affordable. Additionally, if you're interested in full Polygon Runway experience, there is Ultimate 3D Bundle with all of my courses in a single package. So if you're interested in either of those, please go check them out. The links are in the description. And now, without further ado, let's get to it. Let's jump into empty Blender file and create some spooky graveyard. Let's start by deleting everything here. And we can press Shift A and add empty plane. And now let's tab in, let's press S and 4 to scale this 4 times. And now I want to subdivide this few times, so right click, subdivide, and I will repeatedly do this, so it's exponential. So I think it was 4 times subdivision. And now select the central vertex and we'll enable proportional editing by pressing O, pressing G, then Z, and we'll adjust with the mouse wheel. So we have a nice bump like this, and now additionally we can switch this to random and drag up a few of these vertices, so press G then Z, and we'll reduce the fall off size like this and create some terrain irregularities like this. Nothing too crazy here. This should be enough. Let's press O to turn off the proportional editing, and now let's alt click the side here, and by holding Alt Shift let's select these other sides and let's press E then Z and extrude this down, and then you can press S then Z and 0 to flatten it out. So this will be our terrain. Let's make sure our normals are okay, so let's press A to select all and Shift N to recalculate them. And additionally, to make this look more interesting, we can go to a top view and go for face select by pressing 3. Select all of these top faces and let's press Ctrl T to triangulate them. That will give them a little bit more interesting look when they're flat shaded. So that'll be our terrain, and let's now start modeling some gravestones. So I'll press Shift A and add a plane. Let's press G then Z and move it up a little bit so we actually see what we are doing, and now tab in. Let's make this smaller like that, and then S and Y to scale it on the Y axis. And let's press E to extrude, and I want to scale this up, so press S. And this will be a little bit cartoonish, more exaggerated and stylized look, a little bit on the side of Tim Burton's spooky design, so I will exaggerate the proportions a lot here. And now I want to create a curvature up there. An easy way how to split this is to go for edge select by pressing 2, select these two edges, right click, clicking subdivide, and then increasing the number of subdivision to something like 4 or even 5. And now let's just select these two faces in the middle, press G then Z and move them up. And additionally, we can go back to edge select by pressing 2, select these edges separately and slide them down by pressing G twice. So this should give us a pretty nice low poly shape for a gravestone. And additionally, we can look from the side, press K for a knife and start by cutting like this, and then press C to cut in a straight line and Z to go through, click and enter to confirm. And now we can alt click this loop here, press Alt E and extrude faces along normals. So we have some more structure to it. And now let's select the front face, let's press I to inset and extrude inside. So this will be our first gravestone, and what we can do additionally is to press A to select all and G then Z and move it down a little bit so it goes underneath the origin point. So then when we snap this to the surface, it goes inside the terrain and we have no difficulties there. Okay, let's tab out and move this to the side. And next I want to create the cross, so let's press Shift A, add a plane. I will move it up as well. And now tab in and let's make this smaller. I like this, extrude, make it smaller by pressing S and then extrude up. Let's make it larger a little bit, extrude and extrude once again. And now we can extrude these sides by pressing Alt E and extrude along normals. And that should give us a nice cross, and we can push this down underneath the origin point as well. So these will be our basic gravestones, and now we can just switch these to face snapping. Press G and by holding Ctrl you can snap this to the surface, just like that. Let me move this down here, and let's press S to make it smaller. This one as well. And I will give them some rotations, so let's rotate this on the Z-axis and push it down. Here we can make the base a little bit larger. And now let's rotate this. You can press R twice to enable trackball rotation. Push this down. And now let's select this gravestone. Let's press Alt D to duplicate it and Shift Z to lock it on X and Y plane. And release it here. Let's press G then Z and move it up. And additionally we can rotate it, make it a little bit smaller so there's some variation, and R twice to adjust that rotation. And maybe let's create a new one right here behind the cross. We can always adjust this later. Something like this should be fine. Maybe we can push this even lower, just like that. Okay, and now I want to create a little mausoleum, very stylized and compact here. So Shift right click to move the cursor in place. Let's add a plane by pressing Shift A. Let's scale this down and scale on X-axis, just like that. Let's press E to extrude and S to scale it out, just like this, and additionally on Y-axis. And now let's create few loop cuts. So I'll press Ctrl R and move one here and down in the bottom. And now we can select this loop by holding Alt and press Alt E and extrude faces along normals. Push this inside. You can press S additionally to enable even scaling, just like that. And now let's extend the roof. So let's go back to the edge select these two edges and right click, subdivide, select this edge in the middle, press G then Z and move it up. Now I want to create a triangle in here and extrude it inside. So first of all, let's press 3 for face select this front face. Let's press I to inset, like this. And now let's go for vertex select by pressing 1. Select this vertex here, enable auto merge and press G twice and slide it up so they connect. And now we have a triangle here and we can extrude it inside like this, and additionally give some structure to the roof as well. So let's select these two faces, press I to inset, and now Alt E and extrude along normals and push it inside. Remember, you can press S for even scaling. And now for the front door, let's select the front face and let's press I to inset. Tiny bit like this, that should be enough. And now select the side edges, let's press S then Y and scale them inside. And now we can select the top edge, right click, subdivide, and select these two vertices and press G twice to slide them down and extrude all of this inside. So let's press E then X and extrude it like that. So that'll be our little mausoleum. I think the door would look great here. So let's select these two edges and let's press Shift D to duplicate them, right click to release them in place, and additionally we can press P and enter to separate the selection into a new object. So now we can tab out, select the separated edges in a new object, tab back in, and let's press E then X and extrude them just like this. And additionally, of course, we can push this up. So press G twice, then hold Alt key, and you can go to the other side like this, or you can look from the side and just update the shape manually like this. It really doesn't matter, so this should work just fine. And additionally, we can press A and Alt E and extrude along normals so they have some volume. And I think we should go outside with this. And let's press A and Shift N to recalculate normals in case we flip them. Another thing that we'll need there is some tree. So let's shift right click here to place the cursor. Let's press Shift A and add a single vert. If you don't have that option, go ahead and in the preferences, add-ons, enable extra objects add-on. And now let's look from the front. Make sure you are in the vertex select. Let's press E to extrude. Then once again, let's go to the side a little bit. And now we can extrude some funky looking spooky tree. And again, I'm kind of inspired by Tim Burton's style. And what spooky design would that be without some swirls? So let's make some. And here. And then of course, distribute this a little bit better. So we can select groups of vertices like this and rotate them and place them in 3D a little bit better. So it's not completely flat. And this should give us a nice shape of a tree. And of course, we can additionally adjust the size. Okay, we can always go back to this and adjust it later, because right now I will just go ahead into the modifiers tab and add a skin modifier. Let's select all by pressing A and Ctrl A to scale this down. So the branches are really thin, like this. And now we can select the bottom vertex, enable proportional editing once again, but don't forget to change this to smooth. And let's press Ctrl A to scale it up, and we can additionally play with the fall of size, just like this. And now we can select the vertex in the middle, make it a little bit more bulky, something like this, and here as well. So this should be our tree. And now let's add some details like a few rocks and a fence. So let's press Shift right click there and Shift A, add a cube. Let's bring it up a little bit. And now let's press Ctrl 1 to add Subdivision Modifier and apply it right away. We can tab in, make this a little bit smaller on the Z-axis, and now press slash on a numpad to go into the local view. And let's go here, and instead of knife, let's select bisect, and we can do slices like this. Remember, you need to have all of the mesh selected. And now we can choose to clear outer and fill. So we have a nice plane here, and now we can rotate around, press A again to select all, and do a few more of these slices. And now let's press slash on a numpad again to go out of the local view. And first of all, let me drag this down, scale it down. And with the face snapping still active, we can snap this to the surface and scale it down even more and create a little bit of rock tiling here near the Mausoleum entrance like this. And I'm using Alt D to create link duplicates, so then later when I modify them or add material, they all get modified at once. And remember to rotate them in place so you get some variation from them. And then of course you can modify the size as well, and it should do the trick. And we can additionally place some of these rocks around, make them smaller, so it looks like there are a few pebbles maybe lying around. And you can always go back to this and refine these details if you're missing some on the final render. And now let's create some fence. So let's shift right click here, let's press shift A, add a plane, let's tab in, make it smaller, and don't forget to turn off the proportional editing. And let's press S and scale it on the y-axis, just like that, and extrude it up. Now we can select all, push this down by pressing G, then Z. And then let's select these two vertices and press G and Z to push them out a little bit, and maybe on the y-axis to make this more cartoonish. So that should work just fine. Now let's switch to the edge select this edge right here. Let's press Shift D, right click and P, enter to separate this into a new object. Tab out, select the new object, tab back in, let's select all and press E and Z to extrude. And now of course we can scale this out a little bit, just like that, and move it up a little bit more. And maybe some of these vertices separately to get nice shape like this. And additionally we can select all and press G, then X, and move it here. Now let's press Ctrl R and create a few loop cuts like this, and one more here. So that should serve as a base mesh for the fence. I want to convert this to curves. So first of all, let's go to the edge select by pressing 2, and now hit Alt Control and click to select the loop of these edges. And additionally we can press Alt Control Shift to add these other ones, and let's press P and enter to separate these to a new object. But before we jump into that, let's alt click this loop right here, and let's do the same for that one. So press P, enter to separate. Now we can tab out and select this original plane and delete it, so we are left only with the edges. Now let's select this object right here, and let's switch this to selection tool. And first I want to select these edges right here and delete them. And let's additionally switch to vertex select by pressing 1 and select all of these vertices right here. Press G twice to push them up a little bit, and then we can press Ctrl B, then V to bevel them. Okay, now tab out and let's right click, convert to curve, go to the curve settings, geometry tab, and add some depth to those. And additionally we can reduce the resolution as far as 1, so it's really low poly according to the other objects in the scene. And now let's choose fill caps, and we'll modify the shape of these a little bit. So tab in, select the bottom control points, and let's press Alt S to scale them down a tiny bit. And let's select these in the middle, press Alt S, scale them up. And now let's select the endpoints and scale them down like this. Additionally, of course, we can make some changes in the shapes, so we can make some of these longer, some of these can go higher up. So whatever works for you, this should be the final result. So now let's tab out and let's select this edge right here, tab in, and we have some leftover vertices here we don't need, so let's select those and press Ctrl X to dissolve them, tab out, and now again right click, convert to curve, and let's add some depth, enable fill caps, and of course here we can make some changes as well. So let's select the endpoint here and let's press Alt S to scale it down a tiny bit. And of course we can reduce the resolution to 1, so it's really low poly. And I can see the tree looks quite alright here, but I don't know if this will work with lighting because it's only square shape now. So what we can do is to press Ctrl 1 to add some subdivision modifier, and then go to the modifiers tab and add decimate and reduce this down So we have some low poly shape back, but it's not all square like this. That should work, and maybe we can make some changes. And I want to select the bottom vertex here and extrude it down so it goes underground, and Ctrl A to scale it up. Okay, I really like this. So that's the modeling for the scene basically. I don't think there's much more left to do, apart of course from selecting some of these details, moving them around, adding more details. That's basically upon your creative decision how far you want to push the details of the scene. So the last step will be just to create the backdrop here. So let's press Shift A and add a plane, and I just want to scale it up to create the background and push it down. And let's set up a camera here. So I'll press N and locate my Isocam add-on. If you don't have it, you can find the link in the description with the guide how to install it. And I want to create a true Isocam, and it doesn't really matter because in the end I want this scene to be perspective. So I'll go to the camera settings and switch this to perspective. It's just easier to create a camera this way. You don't need to place it in a position or anything. And now let's go to the output settings and let's switch this to something with a 4:3 ratio like this, and let's press G then Z twice to move the camera inside, and G then Z to move it up. And this is quite fine for the base view. If you want to change the view here, there's easy way. You can go to the view and check camera to view. I have it linked to my quick favorites, so I can access it like this. You can just right click and add to quick favorites, and then you can just enable it right here, and your camera will rotate with your view, so you can position it the same way you are navigating around your scene, just like that. And then don't forget to turn it off. So now we have our camera placed in the scene and we have our layout ready. It's time to go to the lighting section. A lot of you were asking for this. Sometimes there is not enough time if I want to keep these videos short, but I think full Halloween illustration like this deserves some lighting setup. So let's do that right now. I will switch the render properties now and enable some things like ambient occlusions, bloom, screen space reflections. That's just to make the previews nicer because I want to use cycles for the final rendering, and let's set it up right now. I will enable GPU for the rendering and set this to 512 samples and enable some denoising. I use open image denoise for the final renders, and for the viewport I use optics. That's working only if you have RTX NVIDIA card. And when rendering on GPU, of course, it makes sense to make the tiles larger. It can brush off some time from your renders. Now additionally, we can press Ctrl B to limit the view only to the camera viewport. So now if we enable render preview, we are rendering only this portion. And we can see there's no lighting there, but the scene looks quite alright here. So let's start by adding some lights. I will switch the viewport shading here with the scene lights and scene world, so we have an actual preview of our lighting, and start with some area lights. So let's press Shift A and add an area light, and let's press G then Z and move it up like this, and hold period on the keyboard to switch the 3D cursor. You can do it here as well. Press R, X, and I want to enter minus 45 degrees, and now let's press R, Z and 45. So we have a camera. So we have a light shining from the back, and you can press G and Z twice to move it on a Z-axis and move it closer or further away. And of course you can press R and Z to rotate it around your scene. So let's set some light power, something like 1500. That should be quite fine. And let's move this out a little bit. So we have some preview here. But let me switch back here to the original HDRI preview. I want to give some colors to the scene. So let's select the background here and let's create background material, and let's go all the way black here and with some additional roughness. Now select the ground, we'll create the new material, and let's create like a desaturated brownish color here. And again, I want to go a little bit higher with the roughness here. Let's select the rocks and let's do a color like this maybe. Now the stones, I think some bluish tint would look nice here, and let's set the same for the Mausoleum. And we'll need some darker brown color for the tree, so we can choose the original ground material, create a copy, and then, you know, make it darker and a little bit more saturated like this, and choose the same color for the door here. And again, I want to add some roughness, and here as well for the stone materials and for the rocks. Let's assign the rest of the materials here. Really simple thing. This scene will be all about the lighting, so you really don't need that much colors in the scene. And let's make this metallic here as well. And that should do the trick. So let's go back to the camera view and let's switch back the preview. Let's select our light and let's make this blue like this. So it's basically a night sky with the moon shining on our scene, and let's make it even stronger, something like 2500. And I think these rocks are too saturated, so you can just reduce the saturation. And now the main accent should be a green light here to make it a little bit more spooky. So I will shift right click here inside the Mausoleum and let's press shift A and add a point light. And let's give it some strength, like 500, and let's give it some green color. Like here, more on the side towards the blue. You don't want the green color like this. I think this one looks a little bit better. Okay, and let's push it inside, so the point light actually is not visible, but if you look at the render preview, this looks quite okay. And of course, don't make it sit on the side there, because that could swallow up some of the light. So let's just hide it behind the door like this, so we get a lot of shine coming through. Okay, that should work. And now let's create some scene ambience around. So let's select the original area light, let's press Shift D, RZ, and rotate it like this. So we have some light shining from the side. And now if you press R and X twice, you can rotate it down, push it up a little bit, and by pressing G and Z twice, move it closer to your scene and rotate it around. And what we are looking for are the reflections on this. And we don't want the shadows from this light to be so sharp, so let's make it larger. And let's make the light something like 800, something really smaller and more blue probably, something like that. And now let's press Shift D, RZ, and rotate to the other side. And here I want to create another green color, so it kind of looks like there might be another source of that green light that we see right here. And you can see how nicely it shines on our gravestones and everything around. And we can make this smaller to make it a little bit more pronounced, something like this. But the most important part here will be the world color, and you will see the difference right away. I think the green color in like a spooky Halloween settings like this looks really great in combination with violet tones. So let's switch the world color to violet and let's make it stronger and really more saturated. And you can now see how the shadows became violet and purple. So I really like it right away. And now it's time to add some details. Now that we have a light in the scene, we can see how these details will affect that lighting and those reflections. So I want to give these stone shapes some variation, because now they are too flat. So let's tab in and let's create some bevels. So I'll press Ctrl B then V to create a bevel like this. Now we can press Ctrl T to triangulate and slide this down. We can maybe bevel this one here and slide some of these vertices around. Basically it's all about giving these shapes some interesting details, and something like this here. Okay, that should work, and you can see the difference right away. And for the cross, it should be maybe more pronounced, so let's create a loop cut here and bevel this in the middle. Press Ctrl T, and now let's create some additional bevels like this, so the shape in the end feels a little bit more rounded and interesting. You can now see how this looks chipped away when the shadows are created by the light. And now let's do a similar thing here. So let's go back to the camera view. We are almost ready. Let's preview the cycles render. But this is a little bit too dark, and in the scenes like this I like the light to be a little bit more dispersed, and we can help with that by adding a volume. So let's press Shift A and add a cube. Now let's make it larger and push it up like this, so it kind of engulfs all of our objects here. And let's create a new material here, and let's remove the surface shader, and let's add a principled volume shader in the volume section. And let's reduce the density to something like 0.01, really subtle. And additionally, you can of course change the color, but be careful, don't go too saturated here. Just a slight tint should be enough for the fog. And now if you preview this in cycles, you can see the nice color dispersion here. This looks much more interesting, a little bit more spooky maybe. And the next thing that's really important, and a lot of mistakes I see out there when you tag me on your Instagram posts, you do a great modeling job, but in the end your scenes can be too dark and too flat. Basically there's a lot of really dark black shadows there, and the scene gets lost. What really helps is to maintain some tonal balance, and sometimes it's hard to do with the lights themselves. Your scene might be a little bit dark in the end when you end up with your lighting, and the great way how to balance that is with the color management and exposure. So always try to bring up the exposure a little bit more and find some sweet spot. And the second important thing, to change the contrast here. With the volume shader here, we can go even high contrast, and then we have some more space to work with the exposure, and you can see the difference right away. So I really like this. Maybe we can make the ambience a little bit stronger, and I think this is too much, so let's reduce this back to something like 1800 and push it out a little bit. And I don't like how this looks too flat here, so we can take this light, make it a little bit smaller, switch back to the 3D cursor, press R, X twice, and bring it up tiny bit, and you will see the shadow appears here, and we gave some structure here. But this is basically ready, and from here it's all about some additional tweaks, you know, adding some details, modifying the colors of the materials, modifying the colors for the lights and stuff like that. So that's the stylized Halloween spooky scene for you. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to see your result, so don't forget to mention me in your descriptions so I can see your works. And again, if you're new to the channel and you really enjoyed this and you want to see more in the future, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.